Welcome to Surrender School.
This is the Essential Enneagram Empowered 12-Step Workshop. This is step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. So what I'm going to talk about now is what might make step 5 difficult for your type. If you haven't noticed yet, you will notice sometime very soon that these are like repeating themes. The 1 has the repeating theme, the 2 has the repeating theme. And of course, you do have a repeating theme because this is basically your gotcha. This is your passion that is acting out, right? Okay, so for the 1, last week, they were searching for the perfect inventory. This week, they're searching for the perfect person to share that inventory with, because that's what 1s do. The 2 sees nothing wrong with the pattern. They have this pattern, just the pattern that Joy was talking about earlier. They want to be indispensable to people. They think that basically that's what love is to them. They want to be the one that steps up. They want to be the go-to person for all these things, right? Then they see nothing wrong with that pattern. So they're not quite sure how to share that. That's the reason, by the way, we do the inventory, because we get to see that thread of behavior. We get to see that pattern, right? Okay. So for the type 3, they don't have much to share, so they're not sure how this will help at all, because they've done their inventory very, very narrowly, right? They don't dig very deeply, so they don't have a whole bunch to share. So when other people will say things like, it took me 4 hours, or it took me 4 days, whatever, to go through my inventory, the 3's like, it's going to take me like 10 minutes, right? Because they don't have much to share. And sometimes, and that will inhibit them because they've heard all these stories and theirs is very, not a lot. Okay, with the 4, they are stuck in step 4 and they choose to suffer more. They are the ones that delay, and they live. Very often they live in step 4, or they live in 1, 2, and 3, or they live in columns 1 and 2. They live in that old story. 4s get very stuck in their old story. Okay, for the 5, they're a very private person and they don't like to share things about themselves with anybody. So that the idea of having to do that is not like high on their list of good things to do. So that's the difficulty for the 5. The 6 is afraid of what will happen if they share. And it can be as simple as, can they trust the person that they're talking to? Or it can be even something deeper than that, is, will they expose themselves to other people? Will people then have like a bad view of them, or, like a myriad of fears? And I will say with the 6, those of us, and when I go through the different instincts of the 6, you will see it is multi-layered, because they have all of the instincts are there. And the 6 is very complex. Okay. For the 7, they just want to be quick and painless. They don't like to be in pain. They don't like to be trapped. They don't like to have to go on and on and on about the past at all. So they basically just want to be quick and painless. For the 8, they want to set the parameters of the engagement. They want to say who, where, how long, where are we? It's going to be in this private area, and it has to be, they want to set the parameters. And I know this because that was me. All right. And then 9, the type 9, they delay in picking a person and then they talk themselves out of it, sometimes over and over and over again, right? It's just that, because they're wired to basically delay good and bad things, right? That's just kind of the way they do things. And once again, it has nothing to do with laziness. It doesn't even have anything to do with fear. It actually just has to do with the fact that they think later is better. If you remember last week, I had the picture of the flower that broke through asphalt because of and I compared it to, or used the metaphor that that's the way that nature works, because that's the way our nature works as well. I want to introduce you to this. It's called insanity, and it actually is insanity. It is at the top of the stratosphere here in Las Vegas. Stratosphere it looks like the Space Needle, kind of like the Seattle Space Needle. It's really tall. And at the top of it, this thing's, they stick it out over the side and it spins. And centrifugal force takes these people who are facing right now ahead and it moves it so that it basically moves like this, and they are facing the ground as it spins, right? Because centrifugal force, that's the way it works. And my personal opinion is you do have to be insane to be on that. Somebody did fall and die one time. I mean, because it's just like a seatbelt that hooks you in anyway, but it's called insanity. If you are the kind of person that likes to do stuff like this, you probably do want to check it out. I hear it's cool. I've never done it, never will. Okay, the reason I bring this up is because centrifugal force, imagine like a salad spinner or your washing machine, right? All of that, that's centrifugal force. And that is a force in nature. It is a force of nature that works. And just like that, in our lives, we have a force of nature. Gravity is another force of nature. And your passion is another force of nature. Your personal force of nature is the passion of your type, right? And it shows up in your feelings and your behavior. Okay, that's where it shows up in your life, is there. And that's when you first start to notice it is there, right? Because it causes most of your suffering. All right, so this step 5, allows you to see your main defects and shortcomings and prepares you for steps 6 and 7. Most people don't talk about the fact that 4 and 5 prepares you for 6 and 7, but that's what it has to do, right? So the idea here is 4 allows you to get it out, get it on paper. And then we're looking for the thread throughout. And what you share with your sponsor is the nature of your defects, wrongs, and so forth. In my opinion, not all the details of all of that, but just the nature of it. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a second about something called inquiry. And inquiry is what we're doing here. And it's what we do, frankly, when we're working our steps. And I'm going to read this. This is from A.H. Almas, who's like one of the gurus of Enneagram. Inquiry is a process of delving into the secrets of existence. Ego incrustations begin to break up when we start to see images as images, structures as structures, patterns as patterns, and projections as projections. All of these are created and held together by our beliefs that they are reality. The more you see them as they truly are, the less you believe in them, and the more they start to dissolve, to break up and dissolve. So I'm going to focus on patterns as patterns. When we see the patterns that we have in our life, are patterns, and the projections, which basically are the story, which is a story we're telling ourselves. That isn't reality. It's the story we're telling ourselves. And the more that we see that, the more then that ego structure can dissolve. And by the way, I picked this. This is Tower Bridge. So Kate, this is for you. This is Tower Bridge in London, which is absolutely gorgeous, obviously. So anyway, but the idea is, right, we have these structures, these patterns, these projections, and if we recognize those, that's how this starts to, that's basically how the ego structure begins to dissolve. All right, I want to talk for a second, and I've said this many times, I'm going to have a drink of my coffee here real quick. Sorry, okay. So many times I've said, I live in 10, 11, and 12. So step 10, step 11, and 12. Every day, that is the way I live my life. And the reason, and when I say that, basically for me, step 10 is live clean. So I don't owe amends, live clean. And if I owe amends, make them right now, right? Live clean. Step 11, seek God. Step 12, help others. And if I can live in that, it's awesome. And so what I want to talk about is when you live in steps 10, 11, and 12, you are on the path of happy destiny, what they talk about on the big books, page 164. Trudging, which just means walking, the path of happy destiny. That is what it feels like. That is what it looks like. If, however, you live in steps 1, 2, and 3, I'm powerless over food, alcohol, whatever. My life is unmanageable. I'm coming to believe that there's a power greater than myself, and I'm ready to give it. Okay, I'm powerless over, and you live in that, or you live in step 4, columns 1 and 2, your old story. You just continue to live in that old story. What happens is, see the red thing? You're beside the path. You're not on the path of happy destiny, right? You are beside the path. You're climbing over rocks, running around bits, you're running into trees, you're doing all that. And eventually what happens is you leave, because that is not an easy life. That isn't even a good life. It's a hard life. And those are the people that leave because they never end up on the path. So I really, if you've already been through the steps, awesome, great, great, great. If you have not, I really want to encourage you, get through the steps, live in 10, 11, and 12. It's a very blessed way to live. Living in 1, 2, and 3, And step 4, columns 1 and 2, like that very beginning of that, it is not. Okay. Now, I say at the bottom here, share the nature of your defenses in step 5. Don't get lost in the weeds. The people that get lost in the weeds are the ones that eventually you can't stick around. So I think step 5 is about the nature of our defects, right? The nature of our wrongs, if you will, not all the wrongs in the world, just the nature of them. We want to find that thread. That's why I really like that new inventory, because it really makes it clear what the nature is. Okay. Now we're going to move on to new information, new-ish. Okay. So the 3 passion times instinct equals what is called subtype. And basically the instincts there's 3 instincts, and these are the instincts that the dominant one is what drives you. The lowest instinct, we have all 3. The lowest one, basically you just don't want to deal with it, is the way it works. Okay, so the self-preservation instinct is withdrawing, avoiding, protecting. The social instinct is connecting, including relating. I'm going to cover this in a little bit more detail in a minute. And the sexual or one-to-one is approaching, acquiring, and fending off. I want to cover real quick, once again, there were some questions about the mantra that came up. So each week, your first assignment is to memorize your mantra. And this diagram is on Surrender School on the website. Wherever you see the word mantra as it goes through each week, just click on that word and it brings up this diagram, and it has all the mantras that are here. So you want to work on yours and really practice it. Because what we really want to do is notice, as you include the mantra in your daily life, is your ego structure softening? I found that because mine is, in my vulnerability lies my strength. I don't like to be vulnerable, right? So if I realize I want to be strong, if I realize that my actual strength comes from my vulnerability, then that's when it softens that ego structure. Okay. What I want to talk about quickly, I mentioned this in the past, but I want to go a little bit deeper into it. The base emotion, I don't say core emotion, because I think the core is your true self, but the base emotion, the one that drives more than anything, there at the top, the 8, 9, and 1, that main emotion is anger, right? It underlines everything. For the 2, 3, and 4, it is shame. And for the 5, 6, and 7, it is fear. And for each of those triads, right, there's 3 of them. For each of those triads, there's lots of 3s that show up in this program, obviously. But for each of those triads, one of them expresses that emotion, one represses that emotion, and it comes out sideways sometimes, and one denies that emotion. Okay, I'm just going to do the top one. It's the only one I've actually studied. The 8 expresses anger, no doubt. The 9, right, that center one, basically denies or sets it aside. They would say that they're not angry. And the 1 represses anger, and it comes out as judgmentalism, and right, and then they feel really bad that they feel angry. So just realize, whatever your type is, you will fall that base emotion, and this hopefully will help you see some of the things, and it is tied to those extra columns that were added by Dr. Carroll, that were added onto that, ties back to this emotion in some cases anyway. Okay, so once again, anger for the 8, 9, and 1, shame for the 2, 3, and 4, and fear for the 5, 6, and 7. And I will cover this more deeply when we talk about probably in session 8. But I wanted to introduce it here because it does kind of overlay. All right. So I talked about this the other day. I had arrows to the different parts of the brain, but basically the reptilian, which is at the base of the brain, asks, am I safe? And it is tied to the instincts. It's body-based, and it's tied to the instincts. It happens before we even know it's happening, right? If you think about it, you can see instincts very clearly in animals, right? Dogs that circle, right? Dogs that sniff each other's butt. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm sure that has something to do with an instinct of some sort. Anyway, but instincts are body-based, okay? Basically, the limbic system, which asks, how do I feel and how do I act? That is heart-based. That has to do with those feelings, and even the way that we act out are heart-based. And then the analysis of that, if you will, the neocortex, what decides what stories we tell, that is head-based. So we have body-based, heart-based, and head-based. You belong in either head, heart, or body. Your type is in one of those, head, heart, or body. but it doesn't mean that you're really good at it. So the assumption that like as a body type, I'm always present, right? That's not true, right? So sometimes I'm good at it and sometimes I'm not. So just don't feel like it means that because you're a heart-based person that you're really good at feelings, because it may not be the case. So don't kind of fall into that. Sometimes language collides, right? So now I want to talk real quick. I want to come into what we're doing in the course. So the instinctual variants we covered last week and this week. So we're covering the instinctual variants, these instincts that are basically at the base of the brain, and this stuff comes out before we can even stop it. An example for an 8, for me anyway, if somebody is being bullied, when I was younger especially, before I even had a chance to think about it, I am in front of them basically bullying the bully. I have to be the bigger dog, the way I used to be in my life. I had to be the bigger dog. Somebody's bullying somebody, I am in their face, period. There was, before I even thought about it, there was no thought whatsoever. It was absolutely instinct. Okay. So that's one of the reasons the 8s are very obvious, because, it's obvious. Okay. So that's the instinctual variants we're covering last week and this week. We have completed-ish the passions and virtues, which reside in the feeling or the heart area, right? And that is how do I feel and how do I act about that? Those passions and virtues. And once again, the passions are what caused our suffering, and the virtues is what sets us free, right? If you think about that. And then the final piece that we will do later on is the fixations and the holy ideas, which you have, other than the fixations being the story we tell ourselves. You don't know about this yet because it's what I'm going to cover. So I had a fill-in sheet that you guys have been working with for the stuff on the bottom, right? The passions and virtues and the instinctual variants. I will have another one that I'll hand out next week that is on the fixations and holy ideas and all the things that we cover in the future. And I'll have it ready for you so you're not like having to make up. You don't have to like go back and watch stuff to fill it in. I'll have it in place because I think it is helpful to have that. All right. So once again, there are 9 types. Most of you do know what type you are, or at least have a good idea what type you are, or you might have a couple, and hopefully with the overlay of the instincts, it will make more sense to you. The reason, by the way, that it is difficult to learn the Enneagram is because in actuality, this is what we have. There are 27 subtypes, 27, and they all act differently. Right? So anybody who tries to teach the 27 types to you, or you're trying to learn the 27 types, it explodes your head because it's way too much information. So what I'm going to do now is talk about the energy behind each of the instincts, and then I'll go through type by type and cover what does that look like in the instinct. So obviously there's a lot that we're talking about today, and it's going to take up most of the time here for sure. Okay. So identify your energy. So first of all, the self-preservation, picture of this little boy hiding, right, is a withdrawing energy. And the way that it looks is pulling back. It is a withdrawing energy. That is what a self-preservation energy looks like. Okay, the social is a connecting energy. So think connecting, right? It's a connecting energy, pulls people together. That's the social instinct. And the sexual instinct is an approaching energy. The social instinct pushes into the world. Okay, it pushes into the world. So if you think about that, that absolutely, those energies, if you will, when they're tied to type, really make a difference. I want to read something real quick on page 52 of the book, just because it's a really good explanation of, I find it because it's about me, obviously. Okay, so at the very bottom of 52. She said, some combinations of instincts and passions are congruent and amplify each other. For example, the approaching others' sexual instinct or one-to-one instinct would combine with the assertive, lusty nature of type 8 to create a real powerhouse, and I am a sexual 8. Or the withdrawing energy from the self-preservation instinct would combine with the observing, avarice nature of the type 5 for a quiet bookworm. My husband is a self-pres 5. So those two together, right, I guess make a good marriage. I suppose 43 years. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to read that because what it says is, right, I am, if this was on a scale, I am like, I push into the world almost probably more than almost any other type does, because I am a sexual or one-to-one 8. My husband withdraws more than the average, more than almost anyone else, because he is a self-preservation 5. The energy of the 5 is withdrawing. The self-preservation is withdrawing. The energy of the 8 pushes into the world. The 1-to-1 energy pushes into the world. I hope that's making sense to everybody. Okay, so the idea here is that these are energies, and if you picture this, the energies, there's 2 ways to picture it. One is these are the instinctive energies. They are instinct. We can soften them a bit, but they are the instincts, and there's one that is dominant, and it probably will always be dominant. We can soften a little bit, it would always be dominant. And so what happens as we work through each of these, that becomes almost the layer on top of type. And as a result, the 3 instincts, when they are tied to the type, so each of the subtypes seem different. And it'll make sense as we go through this, because I'm going to go through each of these and cover them. So let's go into type 1. I will keep that passion times instinct equals subtype. So what do we mean by self-preservation, social, and sexual? So look down at the bottom of the screen if you feel like, no, what was she talking about again? Because I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. But I'm hoping, and once again, it's great for you to pay attention to your type, but if you're confused on which type, then pay attention to the different types that you have. And then, okay. All right, so the self-pres 1 is subtitled worry. Their anxiety comes from suppressed anger. They can be self-righteous, they strive for perfection, and they may even make themselves sick over whatever, okay? That's the self-pres. And once again, withdrawing energy. The social energy, which is that connecting energy, they're called non-adaptability. That's their subtitle. They walk the walk. These are the ones that walk the walk. They appear cooler, and I don't mean like cool, but just not as warm. They appear cooler than the others. They have a strong sense of what is right, and they use that language. This is the right thing to do, right? They use the word right quite a bit. They will express exasperation. So their anger will come out as exasperation. They have 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake of anger. So they do not like to appear angry. It comes out as exasperation for the social. For the sexual or 1-to-1, they're called zeal. Their subtitle is zeal. They have both feet on the gas of anger. Their energy burns hot and intense, and they freely give advice. Now, if you see the bright blue box around the outside, this for each of these, this is the counter. This is the one that doesn't seem like a 1, because the 1, it can be judgmental and self-righteous and all that, but they're usually not angry. But this, the sexual, the 1-to-1 1 is angry. Okay, so, and they have both feet on the gas of anger, and they also freely give advice. So one of the things I'm going to do now is give just a thought of something. If you are one of these, I'll cover just one thing you might try to do. And it's not the exercise that we have at the end is much deeper than this. This is just something to think about more than anything else. Okay, so for the self-pres 1, change your definition of perfection. I think that's probably the smartest thing to do if they strive for perfection. I think I talked about this before, but if you're having people over for dinner and you want everything to be just absolutely perfect, and so you're in the kitchen and everybody else is having a good time and you're in the kitchen, and then you feel frustrated because you're like, what the hell? Change your definition. Perfection is you sitting at the table and everybody serving themselves or something. Can you do that, right? Look at that and see if that's something that you can do. So change that definition of perfection. I don't think you can change the need for perfection. So change the definition of perfection. Okay. For the social, become curious. Instead of judging somebody else who has a different opinion than yours or whatever, go, and really truly curious. So why, I wonder why, tell me where you come from where you're thinking that, right? Become curious. And then the last one, no, in my opinion, is nobody's business, even mine. To soften your need to give advice, because nobody walks in anybody else's shoes, right? Even if you're exactly the same subtype, we have different experiences. Okay, the type 2. The self-pres is subtitled privilege. They can be charming, disarming, and open. They are ambivalent about receiving and ambivalent about giving, which 2s are not usually. They can be deeply hurt when others fail to meet their needs. Notice that that is the counter, right? 2s usually are not ambivalent at all about giving. They give. But the self-pres 2 is ambivalent about giving. Okay, the social is subtitled ambition, and they harness their helpful nature, right? Basically for the greater good. And once again, right, the social is that connecting energy, right? They have a need for approval. They are they like to make themselves indispensable because they want adulation. They want people to really and truly need them. They don't present as vulnerable. Sometimes they present as invulnerable even. And they can step on the toes of others through self-importance. So when Joy early was talking about that, she is a social two. Okay, and the sexual two, or one-to-one two, is aggressive, seductive. They are gregarious and magnetic. They have high energy and they are intense. And then they are constantly on. And then when they're low energy, like they're at home and they're tired, they can get into depression. So this is a two can get into depression. Okay, here's a suggestion. For the self-pres two, set boundaries and communicate your needs. Don't expect people to read your mind, right? Really work on that. For the social, check your motives. Are you buying love, or is this something that you really want to do, right? And then for the sexual or the one-to-one two, if you're having a down day, tell your friends. Don't hide that. Tell your friends, and then do something that feeds your soul. Do something that just makes you happy. Okay, for the type three, the self-pres three is considered, their subtitle is security. They want recognition, but they want to appear modest. They overachieve to prove that they deserve the reputation that they have. Their gift is class and quality work. They're impatient and they shut down their feelings, and they don't acknowledge what they do for show. They basically are oblivious to the fact that they're doing it to basically seek approval. They don't see that at all. Notice the blue box around the outside, the self-pres three, that is the counter. Okay, so because self-pres is withdrawing and the three is basically it pushes in, it has a forward momentum, right? They push into the world not as strongly as the eight, but they push into the world. The self-pres is withdrawing, right? So that's the counter. All right, and then the social is, the subtitle is prestige. They're well-spoken and put together. They're more overt in seeking recognition. It's obvious that they're seeking recognition and they know it. They show grace under pressure. They prefer being a human doing rather than a human being. They don't like sit around much, and they may lose track of their feelings. And then for the one-to-one, their subtitle is charisma. They support others to succeed. They're emotional but afraid of emotions, and they may not know who they are. And they don't often say that, but they may not. These are the ones that when it says your true self, they're like, what do you mean, right? They may not know that. Okay. For the self-pres, feel your feelings. You can handle it. You absolutely can handle it. Allow yourself to feel your feelings. For the social, begin a meditation practice. Really and truly, this would be of huge benefit to the social three to begin a meditation practice. And then for the one-to-one, how do you, and this is a good journal topic, how do you see yourself? Not how do others see you? That's another thing that happens with threes. When you ask them about themselves, they will tell you their accomplishments. They'll tell you like their title, or they'll tell you, right, about their kids' successes, right? Like that. They're never the ones that complain about their kids being a train wreck. They're the ones that basically brag about how wonderful the kids are. Okay. For the four, and once again, reminder, self-pres is a withdrawing energy. Social is a connecting energy. And then the one-to-one or sexual pushes into the world. For the four, you'll notice there's a box that says very distinct subtypes. The four has very distinct subtypes. They look like completely different people, even though they're fours. Okay, so here, the first one is called tenacity. They are tenacious in the face of adversity. They can throw themselves into risky behavior. They can glamorize the dark side, and they feel, at least, that no one came to save them as children. Notice the blue box around the outside. Okay. The social is called inadequacy. They are dramatic and they have a flair for the artistic. They can be frustrating and mystifying to their family because they really are unique. They're very different than the normal person that you run into. They embrace suffering to connect with themselves. So people that are social fours, they embrace suffering because that is how they connect with themselves, and that may isolate from others because they can be downers, right? So it's because they're suffering, you're like, oh God, come on, right? So, but they do that to connect with themselves, and that may isolate them from others. And then the sexual or the one-to-one is subtitled competition. They are direct and honest. They have a direct and honest approach to life. Their envy isn't like, I wish I had that. Their envy becomes superiority, almost like sour grapes. I know they're rich, but I don't want to be rich because it's too complicated, right? Or whatever. Okay. They will complain if they're hurt, and their anger is dominant rather than sadness. So for the self-present, the social, their dominant, you'll see, is sadness, but for the sexual, it is anger. The three that really show up as anger, they're one type 6, when we get there, you'll see show up as anger. For the 8, it shows up as anger, and for the sexual 4, anger, you'll see predominant anger. And I recognize anger in other people because it's obvious in myself, and I'll go, oh, I wonder if that's a 4, a 6, or an 8. Okay. For the self-pres, no mask. You are all that in a bag of chips, so no need to put a mask on. That was my recommendation to you. For the social, do something that makes you grateful. These are the people that they can make all the lists of list your blessings, and it doesn't help them. They have to do something that makes them feel grateful. There has to be an active activity to make them feel grateful. And then the sexual, the one-to-one, use your one arrow to go to serene. And you have the choice to do that, right? To just basically, and maybe meditation that helps you with that, but do something because the one arrow, that serenity of the one is available to you. It's one of your arrows from the 4. Okay, for the 5. The self-pres is called castle. They're intelligent and well-spoken. They're reserved. They think deeply, and they research great. They're really, really good researchers. And then they are very private, and they can say no easily. Just like no. And they can get aggressive to someone who refuses a no. So if they say, perfect example, my husband is this, right? So somebody comes to the door selling something. He says, what are you selling? I mean, it's no, hi, how are you? No. What are you selling? And, oh, I'm not selling anything. He shuts the door. It's like, anyway, I think it's funny. I guess. Anyway, that's the self-pres. Okay, for the social is subtitled totem. They focus on the topic, not the person. So what'll happen is other types, you're in a social gathering, and other type are noticing people's reactions and that kind of stuff. They're very focused on the topic, not on the people. They can miss social clues completely because they're very focused on the topic itself. Okay, they amass a body of knowledge. That's kind of their deal. And the reason that they do that, which I thought was interesting, it says because they fear that life has no meaning. They're afraid of that, and that's why they amass so much knowledge. And then they quietly hold anxiety because they're a head type. So they will hold anxiety, but it's quiet. And the sexual, the one-to-one, notice it has the box around it. It's the counter. And that's because the 5 is a withdrawing type of energy, and the one-to-one pushes into the world, right? So that's what makes it a counter. And also it's kind of almost opposite, I'll say that, of the other types. So this is called confidence. They have a keen intellect, a passionate zest. The do you love me now? When they're in a relationship, it's like they'll do something and like to, do you love me now? How about now? How about now? Right? That is that personality does that. It's the withdrawing 5 energy fights with the approaching one-to-one, right? So that there's that conflict in there, and they're always asking for proof of that. Okay, to help these people, the first one, I did this as kind of a joke. Buy a gift for someone you love. And I showed this to my husband, and I said, that's a hint. I'm kidding. But that is actually really a nice thing to do, because they actually do. They feel deeply, but they don't always express that. And one way to do that is to buy a gift for someone you love. Okay. For the social, the answer here, if all of this is driven by a fear that life has no meaning, make your higher power bigger. We talked about that earlier. Look at a different facet of your higher power. Make that higher power bigger so that you don't live in that fear. And then for the bottom, watch the setting of traps and borrow 8's fresh eyes. Look at things through fresh eyes, which will help you kind of trust your people, and you don't have to test them all the time. Okay, type 6. So for type 6, their subtitle is warmth. The self-pres is warmth. They project peace, calm, and unity. They're hesitant to make decisions. They follow a question with a question. If you ask them a question, they're the ones that will ask a question back, right, for clarification before they answer. And then they have an outer calm that hides their inner turmoil, and they might look like a nine. So the nines and the sixes, right? A self-pres six may look like a nine. That's why very often that second one is a six, almost always. When people say I'm this or this, six is in the mix, almost always. Okay. For the social, it's subtitled duty. They support trusted authority, but it has to be trusted. They cope with fear, with intolerance and rigidity, and they can have their minds made up and never change them. So they can be extremely rigid. They live by their own, by a code of behavior. Once they adopt that and they trust authority, they live by a code of behavior, and they might look like a one. So sometimes, because they have a rigidity that most of the types don't have. Ones can be rigid, and a social six can also be rigid. So they sometimes will look like a one. So you may test as a one or a six, right? And then sexual, note the box around it, okay? Called strength and beauty. They cover fear with intimidation. They rebel against authority, and they may look like an eight, but are motivated by fear. I saw this thing on Facebook, and somebody said, oh, there was this eight. I work with this eight, and this person is really mean, and they're always picking on people, and right? Eights don't pick on people. Eights pick on people who pick on people, right? So I'm like, that's probably a sexual six, I'm thinking, right? Or maybe an unhealthy eight, I don't know. But in general, and somebody did answer that and say, eights they don't entertain themselves by picking on people. That's just not, it's not, they're not wired to do that at all, right? But they will pick on people who pick on people, for sure. Okay, so anyway, some suggestions. All right, for the self-pres, six, force yourself to envision the best future. So probably the best exercise, early on, we had the exercise for the six, list the best things that can happen. You have to do that. You have to force yourself to do that, because no, will all of it happen? No, but how much of the bad stuff you list happens, right? About probably the same percentage, I would think, right? These are the ones that make the worst case scenario lists, which doesn't hurt to know it, but if you live in the fear of that, it's not a good way to live. Okay. For the social six, ask for inspiration and wait for the inspiration. So you're basically going to ask God, because once again, this is another one, have a meditation practice so that your higher power becomes your trusted authority. It's not authority, but you know what I'm saying. If you can trust that, then you basically can wait for that and ask for inspiration from your higher power. Okay, and then for the one-to-one or sexual type six, trace your anger, because you'll feel that anger. Trace that back to fear. Trace it back. What are you afraid of? What is your fear here? Right? If you can trace that back, that will help you dissolve that ego structure that was built, which is really what this whole course is about. Okay, for the seven, the self-pres seven is keepers of the castle. They have upbeat energy, a can-do spirit. They're very cheerful. They can go around authority, and and if they can't do that, they can become cynical. I always wanted to be a seven. I have a seven wing, but I was like, I want to be a seven. They're fun. Okay. For the social, their subtitle is sacrifice. They seem more grounded than the other sevens. They lend enthusiasm and vision to groups. They may need applause, but may move on when the novelty wears off. So these types sometimes, because once again, this type, right, is very self-focused, because they're afraid of being a pain. They're, all of this. So what happens is they'll step up to be part of something, but then when the novelty wears off, they leave. And so they might get kind of the reputation of being flighty or being undependable or whatever. That's the social that does that. And then they may seem like a two because they're helpful until they leave. The two hangs around regardless, right? But they may take off, which once again, that earns them potentially at least the reputation that they are flighty or undependable. And then the one-to-one or sexual seven is called suggestibility. They're optimistic and idealistic. The glass is more than half full. They're easily bored, and they have serious fear of missing out issues, right? For sure. Okay. So for the self-pres, accept that the rules of life apply to you. This is how they become cynical, by the way, because they are so accustomed. I mean, they're the ones that here are the rules, and they look around and go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And they go around whatever that is, whatever the rules are, right? Then they run into something where life has rules, right? Reality has rules, and it's not imposed by anybody except life and reality. They'll become cynical because they want to get around those rules and they can't, right? That's like trying to fight gravity or trying to fight centrifugal force or trying to fight your instincts, right? You can't. So that is when they will become cynical. So just learn to accept that there are some things that you can't get around. All right. For the social, have a daily meditation practice. Once again, this is one of those things that if you have that daily meditation practice, that you will not feel the need to move on, and then as strongly, you won't feel as trapped. I'll say that, because that's what happens. Is they love the fact that people are, oh, you're so good, you're helping them, and blah, 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 and then they move on because it's boring now. If you want to stay with it, and once again, that's a choice that you have. Good meditation and practice is a good way to do that. And then the final one, these are the people that, once again, they're easily bored. So they have a natural curiosity, and they can use that to stay present. If you remember, the mantra for the 7 is staying present is my holy work. Sorry. Staying present is my holy work. And if you think about it, that natural curiosity, so you want to stay present. That's your job, right? Is to basically stay present. So if you have a natural curiosity and use that, which 7s do, right? They can go, let me figure out why they're thinking this, or let me figure out why they're saying this, or let me even figure out what type, I wonder what Enneagram type they are, and use that natural curiosity to stay present. Okay. For the 8, the self-pres 8 is called satisfaction. They are self-sufficient. They have quiet strength. They don't display emotions. They can be steamrollers, and they envelop their loved ones in their force field. For the social, which is the counter, once again, because the 8 pushes into the world and the social connects, right? Warm and friendly, they can look like helpers. They're aggressively defend the underdog. They show care better in a group, and they protect everybody in that group, right? Instead of one-to-one. And the sexual or one-to-one is called possession. They are charismatic leaders. They are passionate and emotional. They exude an aura of power, and they can push to reach a solution. And it's usually their solution that they're pushing for. Okay, so, and once again, work at expressing vulnerability is the answer to the self-pres, like work on that to express your vulnerability. For the social, stop and question before you make decisions, because 8s are very fast at making decisions. I was kind of spoiled because I had a really good team. So whatever decision I made, they made it happen, but it's probably not the best thing to do. Okay, and then the sexual, slow down and connect with your feelings. Really understand what your feelings are. All right, and the 9. The 9 is subtitled appetite. They're warm, funny, and down to earth. They substitute zoning out for lack of love. So if they don't feel loved, the 2 will just work harder, right? That's what the 2 does. But what the 9 does is zone out. They just check out. They go watch television, whatever. Okay. They have stronger personalities than the other 9s, and they can be stubborn. The social is subtitled participation. They're very sociable. They bring cohesiveness and harmony to groups. They can go along to get along. They can be wishy-washy, and workaholism, they will delve into that to avoid any kind of sadness. And notice that social is the counter to that. And once again, it's a connecting energy, and the 9 is a withdrawing energy. Okay, and then the sexual or one-to-one is called fusion. They are introverted, gentle souls. They're intense concentration to intimate relationships, so they will bond very closely with someone else, and they can merge and actually lose themselves in that, right? So and not have an opinion or not have any like individuality at all. They just become merged to the other person. Okay, so for the first one, recognize when you're zoning out and notice why. Doesn't mean you're going to not zone out. Just recognize that you are and notice why. Recognize when you're overworking and notice why is for the social. And for the sexual, reaffirm that you have needs to be authentic. Everyone has a need to be authentic, to have their true selves. So realize that. Notice that at the top, right? This is the session 5 weekly wrap-up challenge. For the self-preservation instinct is withdrawing energy. The social is connecting, and the one-to-one is approaching. Okay, so hopefully you know your type, and hopefully you at least have a guess at your energy. Okay, so I'm going to be looking over here. Okay, so for the self-pres 1, pick something specific Actually, while everybody is still here, I'm going to cover one thing real quick. The last one for all of type 1, all of the types, it says pick a song as your theme song and play it inside your head whenever you find yourself being whatever is your deal, right? Let it help you soften the judgment, merely observing with no judgment. And then I'd love to hear what that is. I put a star there because I want to say almost everybody that works on Enneagram begins by saying, okay, you can't, like if you're going to pick a song, you pick a song that is, like in the case of an 8 would be a badass song. That's not what I want. I want you to pick a song that can be your theme song that helps break down that or dissipate, I guess, that ego structure. So in my case, because especially when I was younger, I wanted to take over everything, or whether I wanted to or not, I just did. I have that forward pushing energy, and it's just easier for other people to let me do it, and they do. So my theme song is Roll With It by Steve Winwood, right? And even back when it came, I can picture myself, I was a deputy sheriff and I had worked like long hours. I was completely exhausted. I'm out in my car and I'm playing Roll With It as tears are coming down my face, right? Because I need to just let go of having to be in control all the time. So to me, Roll With It, perfect song. It's a great theme song. So you want to pick something that is tied to your true self, not the way you show up in the world, right? Not your false self, but your true self. So really give that some thought. So that's the last one on each of these. You'll read it over because they all have a different, let it soften the judgment to, or whatever is your deal, right? Let it soften is that fourth part. Okay. So for the self-pres, pick something that you are very sure you should be perfect. Journal on what perfect looks like. What are you missing out on? How would you change perfect definition to include what you're missing? And what must change in order for you to include that? Okay. For the social, become truly curious about why someone would believe or do something completely opposite to what you think they should. Ask them lovingly and stay curious through the entire discussion. What type might they be, and how does that explain the difference? And then the third one is practice muzzling the need to give your opinion on anything for a week. Watch yourself and silently tell yourself, not my circus, not my monkeys. Hint, they don't want your opinion. They want your approval. Okay, so that's the one. For the 2, practice your mantra in real life. Ask for what you need and ask again. Catch yourself waiting for someone to notice your needs and then make yourself ask for it. For the social, for a week, every time you notice yourself wanting to give time, money, energy, stuff to someone, pause and ask yourself, what am I hoping the outcome of this will be? That they will love me more? Am I willing to buy love? Is it working? Okay, this week, if you're having for the sexual, for the 1 to 1 2, this week, if you're having a down day, tell a friend how you're really feeling. Try not smiling if you are feeling down or nervous or uncomfortable. And then it says, notice the dissonance of smiling when you're not feeling joy or happiness. Now do something that feeds your soul and see how that smile feels. So I want the 2s to actually feel the difference between when a smile comes from the fact that you've done something that feeds your soul, or when it's just like the default facial expression that you use even when you aren't happy. Okay, then the song thing. And with this one is let you pick a song, right? And then let this remind you that you are loved even when you are not doing. So you see that the song thing basically is helping to dissolve that ego structure. Okay, for the 3, remember something that you failed at or didn't try because you feared failing, and call a vivid image of that failure to mind. Now let yourself feel the pain of that failure and say to yourself, everyone fails. It's human and I am human. I don't have to be accomplished to be of value. For the social, set time aside each day, maybe shorten your makeup routine if you lack time, and do a 5-minute meditation. Be kind to yourself, gently bring yourself back to center. Use a meditation app on your phone. Okay, for the sexual, 3, make a list of how you see yourself, no mask. What are you like really? Now make a list of how you think others see you. Are they different? How? Why? And hint, they're absolutely different. Okay, for the type 4, use your tenacity to work a seriously difficult program. This is for the self-pres, like ACA. Buy the Loving Parent Guidebook to learn to become your own loving parent. Your spirituality will explode. Okay, the rest for the 4 is do something kind and generous for some. This is a social 4. Do something kind and generous for someone else every day this week. think of what they might like, feel, want, and give it to them. Truly get outside of yourself. No quid pro quo. Don't expect anything back from them. Okay. And for the sexual, when you see yourself going to superior, might look like sour grapes, pause and take time to trace it back to the original feeling and say, it is human to feel that way, and I am human. Okay. For the 5, research the saying, energy begets energy, and say that as a mantra throughout the week. See if you can begin to soften the belief that energy is finite, because 5s believe that. For the self-pres 5s do. For the social 5, bring hidden anxiety to the forefront and change the facet of your higher power that you have been focusing on. Can you make your higher power bigger, stronger, more interested in you? And for the sexual 5, the conflicting one-to-one pushing into the world energy fights with your type's need to withdraw. So go to that gathering that you have been considering and plop yourself in the middle, no staying on the edge of the room, and start a conversation with someone. For the 6, the self-pres 6, when others make a gratitude list, you need to make a best scenario list. If you need to make a worst scenario list first, do it. Then follow it with the best case list. Read the best case one each day out loud. Hint, neither is going to happen the way you expect. Okay. For the social 6, you are wired to only support trusted authority. Your spiritual path must include questioning and doubt so that you can learn that your higher power is trustworthy. So it has to include worry and doubt. Okay. Be willing to change your mind about your higher power, then work to focus on what your higher power, work to focus on higher power who holds you in the palm of his hand, like the little bunny picture. As you fall asleep, be that bunny. I picked the bunny picture because I wanted to be able to use this, and that is that you are in the palm of the hand of your higher power. So when you fall asleep, picture yourself as the bunny. I absolutely love this. I think it can be so impactful. Okay, and for the sexual or one-to-one 6, this week, when you get angry, pause and ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And stay with that until you have an answer, because that comes from fear. For the 7, if you find, for this self-pres 7, if you find yourself going to cynical or sarcastic, read Alan Berger's Emotional Sobriety to help you realize that reality applies to you as well, and that is okay. For the social 7, work on creating a daily meditation practice, even if very short. Remember your mantra, staying present is my holy work. And for the sexual 7 or the one-to-one 7, when you find yourself bored with a conversation, say inside your head, I wonder what this guy is going to say next, and stay with the conversation rather than jumping to another topic. This is a good, but it's boring. Sorry to 7s. It's a good way to stay present, is just stay curious. Okay, for the 8. For the self-pres 8, practice your mantra throughout the day. And this is in my vulnerability lies my strength. Begin to identify other emotions besides anger as you get a hint of them. For the social 8, remember fast decisions are not always great decisions. When working in a group, come up with an internal reminder like, they have a mother and I am not it. Okay. For the sexual 8, notice without judgment when you push into the world. This will happen almost constantly as you are wired this way. Journal on what this energy has gained you and what it has cost you, and could the gain cost ratio improve with a little finesse. For the 9, the self-pres 9, when you feel like zoning out, call someone who loves you or do something loving for yourself. Do something that makes you feel loved. Journal on, does that delay the need for you to zone out? For the social, set limits on your work and stick to them. Allow yourself to feel sad for a few minutes before checking out. And then for the one-to-one or sexual 9, make a list of the things you like. Even better, make a list of the things that you like that your significant other doesn't like. What did this exercise teach you? Okay. Real quick, I am going to cover, we have so far, we've covered in session 0, the intro to the Enneagram. Session 1, the intro to types and mantras. For 2, it was the intro to passions and virtues. For 3, the intro to wings and arrows for growth. For the 4, instincts and your program. And today, instincts in your life. In the future, we are covering fixations, the stories we tell ourselves. That's next week. Session 8 is shadows and blind spots. Session 9 is owning it to release it. Session 10 is deeper into the wings. So we'll get deeper into the wings, living clean. Session 11 is Enneagram and spiritual seeking. Session 12 is deeper into the arrows of serving others. And that's it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Lots.
Thanks for recovering with us at Surrender School.